Morning.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Good morning.
I just want to confirm there's a matrix data model Sig meeting at 9 a.m. and I've seen people are filling in their names. I guess probably one meeting lower in the agenda.
You're right.
This is the Spec meeting. It's 8 a.m. Pacific time, right?
That's correct.
Yes, yes.
Metrics meeting right after. Punya, do you mind muting? Sounds like it's pretty noisy where you are. Thank you. Yeah, just FYI, people looking at the agenda. There's a meeting right after this. So just FYI, this is the 9 a.m. meeting that's going to focus on metrics data model. We're here right now at the 8 a.m. meeting. So we're going to talk about things that are not specific to the metrics data model from down here. Maybe we can reorder this sheet so that it works differently. Crap.
Morning.
Hey.
Okie dokie. So people feel free to continue to fill this out. Get myself here. So it's 5 minutes past, so we can get started. I think we need to rework how we deal with this time box. For one, this was scoped down to metrics. I think for this meeting, this should just be general time boxing for P1 issues. But it seems a little low value. People don't quite know what to do with this section. So I'm interested in feedback for how we can review or go over the backlog as a group in a way that might be more productive. I think this will also be helped by having roadmaps generated for the various spec interest groups. So the data model group, the metrics API group, getting a roadmap together. And I'm going to work with Alalita this week to get together a tracing roadmap. Even though the spec is mostly completed for tracing, we still have a lot of work to do in the realm of improving the installation experience for people and increasing our instrumentation coverage. So I'm going to try to get a roadmap for that together and present it for people to review in time for the maintainers meeting next week. So that's a goal of mine and Alalita's, just FYI. I'd love feedback into that front. For the issues that are currently marked to do, a number of them have assignees. And I wanted to just run through them really quick and just identify if any of these are actually in flight with a linked PR. So if someone's actually working on one of these, could you just mention it? I'm just going to run through the names really quick, and then we'll be done with this section. Okay. Adding shutdown to metrics exporter interface.
I think that can be closed because the SDK was deleted as part of rewriting that part. So it's no longer applying to anything.
Okay. Do you mind filling that in real quick, Bogdan, with the details? I don't want to close it on these people with a incorrect.
It was a PR that deleted the SDK text from the spec entirely from Riley, and I think the goal is to rewrite that. So we either keep it and say that it's postponed until the SDK work is in place.
Yeah, got it. I see what you're saying. Since we're okay, since we're rebooting this, we're just gonna say.
Do we have a way of capturing requirements? Like, is this a requirement for the metrics reboot? Would it be easier just to call it that and not have it be like a bug? I guess that's the same thing. A feature request is a bug. Anyway.
Right. I mean, I kind of imagine that that we need shutdown in general. But yeah, maybe we can keep this for now.
Yeah, so Ted, how about you just assign this to me and I can go through all the current metrics issue this week. And I probably need to update the issue template just to clarify if people want to open the SDK issue, it will become a feature.
And another thing that we need to do is probably decrease the priority.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
By the way, should we remove all the release after GA labels now that tracing GA is through and metrics GA things have not been decided yet?
Yeah, besides that, we have to retriage a lot of items.
Yeah, I think we need to kind of go through this and overhaul it. I don't want to do that ad hoc in this meeting. But I think we need to get those roadmaps together so that we have a framework for figuring out how we want to relabel things. We've also been only focusing on the P1 priorities. And so there's this huge stack of things we've labeled P2, P3 that are just kind of piling up. So we should figure out what we want to do with all of those as well.
Yeah, I think that once we have a roadmap or something that gives us an idea of what's important next, we can have a triage session like the ones we used to have on Fridays and just go through the issues, you know. But anyway, first the roadmap, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's not worth it to go through all of this right now. We should just review this in a more coherent fashion.
And probably a good thing would be to come up with a list of labels and stuff. Probably what we have so far right now is no longer applying as suggested, like required for GA. I mean, depends on what you call GA and so on. So probably refactor the list of labels first and then reapply them to all the issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there is a standing meeting on Friday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, to do this kind of triaging. Do we want to plan to do that then?
Yeah, but as I said, I think we should start with a new definition of labels or whatever we want to use.
Okay. This so create pacing metrics API metrics data model and collector. Just going to mention that even though we're not necessarily focusing on this. Thank you, people, for correcting my horrible spelling. Then we're going to create new labeling system.
That maybe specifically call out that it's going to be about metrics, I guess, the new labels, I mean, right? And maybe if we do that, maybe do the same thing for the logs as well, I guess, right? If we are going to use the name of the signal in the labels, then it can be done the same way for the logs. It can work the same way. So if we say that required for metrics GA, then it's unambiguous. We can also have required for logs GA in that case.
Yeah, totally. And we are metrics focused. There is this other pile of work that we also need to track. We kind of have been haphazardly tracking this with issues, but we haven't been focusing on doing the work, which is things that are less about specifying things and more what I would call the installation experience, right? Like that can be improved across the board, making it easier for users to get started, increasing the coverage of instrumentation, figuring out how we're going to manage that instrumentation. And what was the third one? There's another one. Oh, things just more like CI/CD performance tests, you know, just a general productionizing our pipeline. That's work that could continue, that maintainers could focus on while the metrics and logging stuff is getting prototyped. But I feel like we don't currently have a great process for kind of tracking that work. We could continue to talk about that work in this meeting, but I'm open to proposals for how we keep track of that. Because it's less about coming up with a spec and putting it into the specification repo. It's more about some of it's fairly language specific, and some of it's just about management and structure of the project. So I'm gonna brainstorm with Alalita about this because she's interested in this problem. But if people have ideas for how to manage this kind of stuff from prior projects they've been involved in, or want to like make a proposal, please do so. We would love ideas for ways to make sure that this work is very public and consumable, and easy for the maintainers to have an idea of what they should be focusing on, so they're not getting spun out context switching all the time. So request for tracking systems. Just out of curiosity, is this a request that's of interest to anyone in this group right now? Does anyone like have an idea that they think would be useful to propose? Looking somewhat side-eyed at Josh Surrath.
Yeah, I don't have anything good to propose, but yes, I will write up my thoughts as soon as I can. Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Yeah.
So I am interested.
Okay, great. If anyone else is just interested in participating, just put your name here. Interested in helping Ed big nerd. Hey, why'd you delete that?
I like the nickname.
Yeah.
So that's a fun story. Do you want to hear why I can't remove Big Nerd from my name?
You got 2
I
minutes.
literally can't get rid of it. It's like a mistake of my youth. But Google literally thinks that's my name, and I can't fix it. So the nickname is Josh Surratt. The real name is Big Nerd, just so you know. So we're all clear.
Got it. But you work at Google now. Certainly you have like an inside angle on fixing this, and just go into the database, right? Just
Oh my. That's the story. That's the story. Yeah. Anyway, we should all have a beer when we can meet in person, and I'll tell you all about it.
That would be fabulous. I have my own Gmail issues, but I'm not going to bring them up on this call. But I have no idea who to contact at Google about them, and it's really frustrating.
I probably don't either, but anyway.
Anyways, so I hope between triaging this stuff on Friday, getting these roadmaps together, and getting some proposals for ways to present this other than just this kind of little box that we don't quite know what to do with. In like 2 weeks, we'll have something that's a lot more public and a lot easier for people coming into the project to kind of get a handle on where we're at and what we're doing. We're also going to start trying to blog more about this stuff and in general inform the public, especially with the spec going 1.0 and release candidates coming out. We're starting to see interest, but we've been kind of quiet publicly around kind of explaining ourselves, like where we're at, our design decisions and things like that. So we need to start doing that a little more in public, in places where people can read it. Since we are kind of a big, complicated project, it's easy for people, I think, to get confused about what we're up to. It's just like a million backlogs with a whole bunch of issues flying around, and it's hard to engage in a project like that.
Is this proposal that Ted, Alalita, and Josh are going to work on? Does it also cover the relationship between the spec roadmap and the SIG roadmaps, or is that a separate discussion?
Yes. I think when we're looking at these roadmaps, it's also about doing the work. It's not just about writing specs. So for the metrics work, for example, we need to be prototyping this stuff before we go back and add it to the spec and ask every maintainer to go implement it, because we don't want them to thrash the way we were creating some thrash with the tracing work. So, and then some of this work, like I was saying, is actually doesn't even have like a spec, necessarily a big spec component, but it's definitely work now that the tracing APIs are settled that we've been kind of pushing off, but we need to start focusing on. So we kind of need a roadmap just to get that all together, so that it's easy to go to the maintainers and be like, this is like, we'd like everyone to kind of focus on this stuff right now. And so they can also have expectations about like what's coming down the pipe, and, you know, be able to manage their backlogs and manage their expectations with their users. So we don't want to be dictating this to the maintainers, to be clear. It's just, we want to create something more systematic, so that maintainers are not having to guess or feeling like they're context switching all the time.
Okay, that sounds related to the question that I'm asking, and I think I won't take up more time from the time box. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, do you have another question? Like please go for it, because this is important.
Well, I think just sort of again, this may just be a sub point of what you're already saying, but the next time there is a significant release of the spec, like let's say it's the metrics, let's say whatever it is, will we as a community know when the SIGs when the SIGs should be expecting to make their conforming releases, right? Because with the trace, like at least again, I've been paying somewhat close attention to Go, and it seemed like we were a little bit caught by surprise by the timing, by the expected timing of the RC, right? And so I'm trying to understand, are we going to remedy that? Is that a problem specific to one SIG? What's the systemic solution here? And this is a planning question, not a what's in the spec question.
Yeah, Punya, can you clarify what was your surprise about the RC?
Yeah, so I think just late last week, Ted was in the Gitter channel asking, hey, is the Go RC going to be ready when we make when the blog post goes out Tuesday? And there was some back and forth there that suggested that, you know, in the Go community, we were not aiming to release around that time, right? And so I think it's totally fine to say we were aiming to release and we missed. No one's surprised that we missed, but I think, again, to me as a relative newcomer, it seemed like there was a little bit of surprise, and that is worrying.
I think that's a surprise for me as well. Ted, can we clarify where is this pressure of having RCs or?
Yeah, first I want to apologize. It was actually literally a question. I wasn't trying to pressure the Go group to release an RC, just because we're making an announcement today about the 1.0 and various groups are working on RCs. I just didn't know the status of Go. And so it wasn't, I apologize if that came off as like pressure, but it was literally just a question. Is the Go group like about to release an RC? If so, I'll include them in the list. If you guys aren't, then I won't. But it wasn't like you guys are missing a target. So I'm sorry if it came off that way.
To me, it didn't come off as pressure. So I again, like I think Tyler's the actual maintainer. Or Tyler's the maintainer who I see in the room right now. So he would know better. But to me, it didn't come off as surprise, as pressure. But I'm actually wondering, like, wouldn't it be desirable if our system did say, oh, the press release should contain, you know, a significant list of languages? Maybe that wasn't the goal for the trace release, but I'm asking, ought it to be a goal that the next rev that we do, we can write a press release and we all agree that we should have an RC that lines up with it.
Yes. I think we, all of these groups are kind of at different stages. But I think at the heart of your question is we need more of a roadmap so that maintainers can focus, right? If they have a sense of where the project in general is trying to row, if they have a sense of what work is going to be coming down the pipe, if we could maybe align what we're working on, especially for the client implementations that are all kind of, I don't want to say at the head of the pack, but are kind of like feeding off of head of the specification right now. There's some working groups where, they're still implementing tracing, right? So they shouldn't feel any pressure to keep up with this.
Right.
But one thing we're looking at doing to help with that is monthly releases of the spec, and ensuring that in those releases, we've had like the spec work kind of blocked in the past by having like big things getting put into the spec and doing a lot of the discussion there. And so we're going to try to move that work out into more like prototyping and design coming from these working groups. So when it does go into the spec, it'll be clean. And in the meantime, there can be like incremental improvements going out the door. So hopefully that means keeping up with the spec will be less thrash and less of an issue for maintainers in the meantime. And also hopefully it means that when we are prepared to like, okay, we want to go implement the new metrics SDK or something like that, that will come with some heads up, and there will be a lot of work already done so that it should be more of a straightforward process. But I completely agree. We don't have like enough of that kind of drumbeat and public roadmap so far. Partially because we were just heads down focused on tracing. And partially because we're still kind of growing as an organization and kind of learning the ropes.
Thanks for walking me through that, Ted. I absolutely was not trying to place blame, but I do appreciate the transparency.
No, that's awesome, and it's always important to ask these questions, especially when there's confusion, because if you're confused about this, then surely there's a bunch of other people on the call who are confused about it as well. So thank you.
As a suggestion for a future process, I think that the Eclipse Foundation has released trains. There could be something interesting there. And I could imagine something where the spec creates a roadmap and then other groups sign up to tie their milestones to spec milestones in a public and kind of ahead of time manner. So when the spec roadmap says X is a month out, Go says, I'm planning to hit X days after that roadmap. And that's a commitment I'm choosing to make ahead of time. And then, the maintainers can say, okay, we're going to, now that you've signed up to do this, we will hold you to it.
Okay, so I think by release trains, it's also a feedback loop, right? So you're saying we can produce a roadmap, we can give an idea of when we think spec work or other thing is going to be done, and then groups can sign up to be part of that release train, so that we have like a complete cycle of being able to go to the public and be like, we expect that this stuff is going to be implemented in these languages, by this date. We have been objectively terrible at predicting when things are going to be done in the past. So that sounds great.
There's a bit of a dance to do here. So in Scala for major releases, we would release milestones where it'd be like language feature A drops in milestone 1, and we'd ask libraries to try it out. And the only thing you're trying to do is not give it to end users, but get maintainers to give you feedback of this language feature is terrible and it's broken everywhere, right? And so that is the churn that we were trying to avoid, and you need to find a way for them to do this in a not release channel. I think is kind of important for them to experiment. But I totally agree with this, is like, if the spec can put milestones out of, we feel like this piece of metrics is done, or this piece of whatever is done, maintainers can look at it and say, I think this is going to be fine, or I need to dive in and report bugs. That helps a lot. But the real key is that there's a release candidate on the spec where the spec effectively is locked. And then there's a long churn for SDKs to catch up and report breaking issues before you actually then release 1.0. And you want to like wait for all the SDKs to be done, right? So I want to like add that as like a thing that we might have to do in the future, just to avoid breaking spec changes. So anyway, I'll write down my thoughts as well. This was a really good discussion.
Yeah, if people have more thoughts on this, it's totally welcome. If I missed some points in the notes, please add them. But yeah, like coherent proposals, even if it's just a paragraph, I think is helpful. It's good to know what people think is missing, or what they think would be helpful for them, especially maintainers, since I feel like they're the ones in the hot seat having to manage this the most. Okay. We're at 8:30. I'm gonna move on to this so that other people can have a chance to get their issues addressed. So Nikita, limbo.
Yep.
Limbo.
I'm again the, well, process guy. So we again have a pull request which has like 4 approvals. It's almost 2 weeks after the last changes, so it's not merged yet. So my one question is, can we reduce that work in progress in some way? Then when I asked again, can this be merged or not, then again came a comment about that pull request that's not good enough, but that commenter didn't want to block that pull request as well. So currently I am in like a total limbo. Should I do anything with that? Can it be merged? Is it bad and shouldn't be merged? So what's going on with that? If it's bad, okay, tell us and we can work on that. But for now, we have 4 approvals. Comes another guy, says, I don't like it, but I will not block it. So should I pay attention to his opinion or not? Should I push merging that? Should I scrap it? What should I do?
Okay, so without getting into the specifics of this one, and if people do have specific ideas about how to resolve this one, let's get to that in a second. I would say generally there's 3 ways. If it seems like what they want is just already a dead horse that's been beaten, then, and there's a bunch of approvals, it might be okay to say like, you know, yes, we can't make everyone happy, but in general, we're going this way. The other option, which I think is common, is often things have like 90% of it people agree on, and then there's 10% that's contentious. If it's reasonable to pull that 10% out and commit the 90%, and then open up another issue just to focus on that last 10%, I think that's a more inclusive process. So I think, you know, we've certainly found situations where that at least helps, you know, get the work out. But it's not always the case. Sometimes the contentious bit is like the important bit. And we don't want to be putting things into the spec where the spec couldn't be released with what got committed into it.
Yeah, so my problem currently is not that this pull request is not merged yet. My biggest problem is that I don't understand what should I do. So if when I am a maintainer of the repo and I look at the pull request, I should have like 3 results. I merge it. I say we will not take it anyway, so I decline it. Or the third one, please change this and that, and then we can merge it. So action item, do this, or do this. Sometimes in spec pull requests, it doesn't happen. They like left in limbo. It's my, like,
I think in those cases, the TC has to be called so we can do something to move this forward. That's the usual way to proceed. And as a matter of, and actually for this one, I would like to be assigned so I can help drive this one way or another. Yeah, Bogdan?
Thank you, Carlos. So Nikita, I would ask you a different question. And remove your interest into getting this in, because I know you have a small interest into getting this in. If you would read all the comments and all the concerns, and you'd be completely independent, would you have concerns or would you do things differently? So that's usually what I'm trying to encourage, because you asked me as a maintainer. As a maintainer, usually you should put the hat of a person that doesn't have any interest into getting something in, and try to understand, is this something that we really care about? Is this something that we want to solve? And is this the way how to solve that? So there are two different things. First, is this important for us to solve? Yes or no? We have to have a conclusion on that. Second is this the way how to solve that? So as a feedback from them, just as a maintainer, this is how I would do things, and this is how I do things in general. But in this specific case, I did not look at this because I feel like somehow I don't have good experience with this engine stuff. And for me, I kind of feel like, and probably this is a problem in general, but if I don't have experience and I don't understand something very well, I'm not sure if I should put my stamp that I accept it. Like when is this thing? I don't know. Maybe I should invest more into learning to this, but in general, I felt that was a problem for me with a couple of PRs, that when it was not easy for me to understand from the first, let's say 10 comments, what is this about and why do we need this? I kind of dropped the ball on that specific PR, but maybe there is some kind of process that we can do for maintainers and for everyone to be able to easily understand the need or the importance of something first, and then review the PR and stuff. So I don't know what would be the right thing. Maybe others with experience of these cases would
I mean, like,
can I add?
really correctly posted to Zoom chat. We have like a already described process how to get pull request merged. If in this particular case, this process broke, we have enough pull approvals. There is no request changes. There are 2 working days passed.
Yeah.
But
I agree with Nikita. I'm a process guy. I think if we have the process now, we should just execute on that. If the process is broken or needs to be improved, we can iterate on that. But simply having the process and not executing that, we're stuck here.
No, I disagree with that. There is another process which says the maintainer should merge all these things if they feel comfortable, correct? There is a rule about who can merge things. And that rule is not you blindly merge things. It says if you know you're gonna maintain these. Yeah. So if I don't feel comfortable.
Where is that process?
What?
Sorry, where is that process?
Look at the roles. Look at the charter of maintainers versus approvers.
I think there's a meta issue, if I can raise it. The meta issue is this is around semantic conventions. Semantic conventions kind of require deep knowledge of a particular niche. And in this case, we're trying to define a semantic convention that applies to like app servers and HTTP engines and that sort of thing. I really love what this is trying to do. I think the idea of semantic conventions, though, has me nervous in general. I've even contributed some myself, and I'm nervous about them because this is like our political, here's the way we want the world to see, everyone to see the world of telemetry, right? and we all need to agree on it. And so there's this like fuzzy, does everyone agree this is how we should see the world? And then combine on that you have expertise, right? Not everyone here is an expert in gRPC. Not everyone here is an expert on HTTP. And the person writing the semantic convention needs to be. And we don't have a special spec approvers around semantic conventions, right? It's like a whole class of thing that's really important to the community that's maybe missing. And I just want to call that out of like PRs, like this PR, I think fell afoul of that, of it's in that semantic convention space. So I expect high political disagreement because we're trying to define a best practice, and people who don't have any practice don't know what a best practice would be, right? So you're kind of like falling between the cracks there of the process we have defined today. So I think maybe if we write a process around how semantic conventions come in, that could help. Because I think it's highly political to begin with. So we need a political process around how those come in. I don't like adding process in general, personally, but in this case, it might actually be worth it, just by nature of what semantic conventions are.
One more thing to add there. If you look at the discussion in the PR, you will probably see that there is some nuance which GitHub does not allow to express actually. Some review systems allow you to do +1 or +2, right? And here it's not possible. So if you look, for example, at my approval, I said, I don't object to this. I don't see why it shouldn't be merged. It looks reasonable to me, and I'm giving my approval. But that's not a strong approval, right? You see, there's no way to express that. And our process does not have a way to express these nuances. And I think that's the reason why this is not moving forward. People don't feel strong approval, right? Whoever did the approval does not feel strong about that. And Yuri also felt that he's also on the fence from what I'm reading from the comments, right? And this is the difference, right? So we have this formal definition of there are two approvals, just merge it. But in reality, these approvals are not the ones that we're expecting in the process to happen. So I think I agree with you, Josh. Maybe there is, unfortunately, more process needed here for these specific cases, more refinement of the process, where people can say, I'm strongly +2 with this, or I'm not, or whatever, right? And maybe this is really the difficulty with semantic conventions. You're right, there is the political element here, right?
I can share one thing I learned in the OpenTime tree C++. There are many folks working on areas where I'm not expert, but I'm the maintainer. For example, people working on gRPC. I'll tell people, we have approval on this from any like valid approver who are expert on gRPC. Once they approve, and I'll wait for a day, and then I'll merge it. I make it very explicit that I have no expertise in gRPC, but I'll merge it once we got valid approval after a day. And with that, people got the social pressure. If they want to approve that, they know that by approving that, they're taking responsibility. So I think it's a chicken egg problem. If we execute on the process, people will feel responsible for this instead of saying, I'll just make my weak approval and wait for the others to decide.
Yeah, you have a good point. So maybe there shouldn't be weak approvals. Maybe that's the right approach. Maybe we should call it out. If it's approval, it's approval. There's no going back, right?
And there is
don't approve if you're not sure. Right?
Yeah. The other thing that tries to make things more or less easy to approve, I felt that when we set up 2 approvers for Spec, people just to hit the number say, okay, I'm on the fence, but just because we need 2 or 3 or whatever, how many we need, they just press the green button because they felt like, okay, I'm not on the fence and I know that there has to be 2 approvals. So there is going to be the second one who's going to do the right or the strong call and so on. So I feel people don't consider always their approval, very strong approval, as you pointed, Tigran.
One more thing, why don't we have an assignee for this PR? Normally we should, right? We should have a facilitator.
I think there was a draft and then converted and we misconfigured the bot.
Okay. So I think that is also probably one of the reasons. Typically the assignee, the facilitator would help in this case, and there was no one.
In this case, the original assignee was Yuri, who is currently exactly on the fence on that.
And who removed him?
So I think this is good. We should probably move on. But I think one big takeaway that I had from this conversation is like semantic conventions. You use the term political. I would use the term bike shit, right? It's about naming things. It's 100% about naming things. Or I would say it's like 50% about describing what the thing does accurately, and the other 50% is like the name of it. That's why they're literally called semantic conventions.
It's naming and categorizing, right? That's the second aspect, which...
Another place where we tend to get poo-pooed by the more academically minded people is we don't have some big fancy structure that we're applying to these conventions. We have like things people need to define, and so they go and define them, and we kind of use dots to namespace things. I am a little bit afraid about handing this over to the academics because like we may never get done. And I think, you know, having some conventions that describe this stuff, perfect or not, is better than none. But I do wonder if, yeah, this is an area where someone wants to become, you know, the semantic attribute czar, where they can at least help us come out with like a bit of a framework for making these decisions. Because I think that's maybe what I'm hearing, something that's missing specifically with the semantic conventions. We don't have a great framework for resolving these issues, and as has been mentioned, it's going to come up a lot in this area. So while we have like general framework for getting stuff into the spec, it seems like semantic conventions need their own framework for at least so that someone can go back through this, like a TC member, and at least go through like a checklist and be like, has this checked all of the boxes? Like you're mentioning, like, are the people approving it like actually experts in this field? Can some prior art be shown as to like why this name versus this other name? So at least we know we're adopting like a Java convention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry that I again interrupt you. So what's the action item for this? I hear that we have to improve our process. Does this pull request wait for improved process, or can something happen with this pull request right now? Action
No,
item, please.
I suggest that for this one, I will just help resolve that so we can get it merged fast. Otherwise, it will take forever.
Yeah.
But but we will have a process or something for the upcoming PRs.
Yeah. The action item is Carlos is gonna pick and resolve this.
Just to make a small joke, Carlos, and if I open today another PR related to semantic convention, should it follow the process or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
yes.
it's much easier to merge something that doesn't have any unresolved comments, or comments just being like, oh, please request changes or go away. Like, I mean, you need to, you need to find for consensus. And if there is consensus on all comments and enough approvals, this PR is typically merged really fast. If there are unresolved comments that kind of hanging there, it's really, you get into this like strange state when you need to find who is actually like have a strong approval, who is having not strong approval, this kind of things.
Yeah, I don't, Sergey, I think I need to call time on this one because we only have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we do need to come up with like a framework for how we think about these things a bit more. Like, I think that's part of the problem with the semantic conventions. They're their own beast. And we need to just tighten up how we deal with them. If anyone has an idea there, feel free to write it up even just as a paragraph and present it. Also, prior art is good. Just don't keep saying elastic container schema because that's not helpful. Okay, moving on. FYI, the 1.0 announcement goes live at 10 a.m. just so people know they want to repost that somewhere or social media, whatever it is you do with these things. Next up, OpenTelemetry Net 1.0 release ready to be announced. Need to align this announcement with overall 1.0 release.
This is a follow-up on a previous item. So,
Yeah.
Michael, the .NET release is in a stable API stage. And you guys mentioned just previously that you want to line up at least RC quality releases for languages to this 1.0 announcement. So we're ready to go.
Awesome.
What's the best way to align the announcement so it comes out from the community?
So this is going to go out the door today, just getting the spec announcement. That was my main ask, was that we not announce 1.0 as before we announced 1.0 the spec. Now that it's out, if you want to, the best way to announce things is on the blog. And so you can send an email to comms with your announcement and ask for it to get put out there. So comms, right. So this mailing list here is the one, just send them a message saying, hey, we're ready to post this. But beyond that, I don't think we have a process. If you feel like you need more of a process, let's talk about it.
This is good.
Great.
Thank you.
Cool. That's the answer. Okay. So here we have a long ask.
Yeah, so this is Rehan. So it's kind of like a question for like principle related thing in our OpenTelemetry pipeline structure. So for some of our metrics, so we only get some metadata when a container dies, like say, for example, container stop time or something like this. So by this time, we actually don't have any real metric data point or metric stats, but we have some metadata we want to ship to our backend. Now the scenario is like the receiver from our OpenTelemetry collector is sending the data, but this data, as we don't have any metric data point in the resource metric slice, we have like only resource attributes or metadata. So these metrics are, or this data being dropped in the processor and finally in the exporter actually. So it's kind of like a principle related question, like, so how would we actually suggest this? So does this kind of data, or should this kind of data where we don't have any metric name or metric data point, but have only resource attributes, should this get passed through the pipeline, or the processor or exporter, I mean the components in the OpenTelemetry collector should stop this behavior? Like what is recommended behavior from community here?
I want to call out a discussion that's happening on the metrics data model around alive and up metrics. So the idea here would be you'd have something that would discover service and then would post like an alive metric with a data point of like 1 or 0, or an up metric or a present metric of like this thing exists. I think you should be involved in that discussion because this scenario is kind of related to that in some way. So I just want to call that out. I don't know specifically how you should do it today. I just know we're talking about things that we can do to help with this.
The reason, Rehan, you want to do this is because you're interested in the fact of the presence of the resource, and there is no metric at the moment.
Yeah,
nothing
exactly.
is recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think my request here, I don't think we have time to get into the details now, but this sounds like it would be great to be written up as an issue and then discussed in, as Josh said, in the metrics API.
Okay, so this issue should lie in the specification doc or like character repo, in which repo this should?
No, I think it's a bigger discussion. We likely need to discuss it in the specification. So it generally is about reporting, about reporting entities, right? About things that exist regardless of whether something is happening with them right now or no. There is There's no recording of the metric happening. No span is emitted from that particular thing, but it exists. It's interesting to observe, right? We want to know about it. I think it's a big separate discussion, to be honest. So
yeah, but one worth having. Okay, so we got to move on now, but this is important. Thank you for bringing it up. And yeah, please do create a spec issue. And if you can make it to that API group, it's on the calendar. That's a good place to talk about in more detail.
Okay.
Hey, John Watson, you still on the call?
Yes, I am. So I just wanted to mostly ping you, Ted. This was my easiest way to make it public. A couple weeks ago, you talked about starting a group to talk about further tracing data modeling, and it kind of spun out of this particular discussion. So I just wanted to make sure that that was still something that was happening, and I would like to be involved.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, step one is just drafting kind of a roadmap, but
I just wanted to make sure this was included in your roadmap discussions mostly.
Right. So this is just your main ask is make sure we form a discussion group, like a working group on tracing issues specifically.
Yeah, I think, or more just make sure that whatever happens with the tracing roadmap, that we include this data modeling question to refine what we have. That's pretty much all.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that poke. Okay, back to Nikita. Nikita, we're gonna nickname you the Hammer. We still have Nikita? Maybe not. Maybe you had to drop.
I don't see him, but he's raising a very, very good point.
Yeah.
He also said, feel free to ignore my last 2 agenda items.
we can maybe punt them to next time, but we got a couple minutes just so people know what they are. One is increasing coverage. Will there be a central effort to reach out to open source libraries maintainers to incorporate observability into them? Yeah, so that's just step one is we'd like to at least have instrumentation. So I think this is part of our tracing roadmap is we have to increase our own coverage of this instrumentation so that people have something. Step two is now that maybe tracing is stable enough that we feel confident in some languages, starting to reach out to those actual libraries themselves and saying like, hey, rather than the user having to install this separate package that we maintain, would you just like to bake this directly into your library? And then you, the library owner, maintains observability for your library using our guidelines. Is that of interest to you? I don't know if we're quite there yet. I do want to do that though.
Yeah, I don't think we're there. There needs to be a lot more effort put into one thing, making OpenTelemetry attractive for these developers, for other developers, right? And that's great examples, that's guides, right? How to do things, right? So it's not just us having an API that you can call and just reaching out to these guys and tell them, hey, just use it. But we really need to make it very easy and very attractive to use OpenTelemetry. I think we need an effort in this area.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see this as kind of like work we can maybe be doing while in tandem with the metrics and logging prototyping going on. But yeah, this is the critical nuts and bolts. Okay, last item. Can we do a better job time boxing these agenda items? Nikita, we spent all the time on your items.
I think we did a perfect job, right? We finished all the items and there is still 1 minute left.
Yeah, but it is true. I will try in the future when something does seem like it's really spinning out into a longer discussion to say, hey, this should get moved to an issue or somewhere else. But yeah, we made it right on the dot. Okay, we do have a metrics Sig meeting coming up right after this. Someone got off the calendar here. So I will see you all who are interested in metrics data model in that Zoom right after this. So cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.